Greetings in the Lord. Newsprint, blackboards, podiums, does it ever end? Well, not really, because life itself is kind of like a classroom where we are always learning lessons. And the fact of the matter is that most of us learn our lessons the hard way. That's why when we look back over our lives, we feel very humbled, because we realize that God was there guiding the process all along, loving us despite our mistakes. And you know, interestingly enough, most people, given the opportunity, would change very little about their past life, because they realize that they have learned as much from their weaknesses as they have from their strengths. Literature abounds in those kinds of examples where people learn their lessons. One of my favorites is the novel called Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, where a young man goes through all sorts of aspects of the spiritual journey, learning those hard lessons along the way. And today we have a movie out, Fatal Attraction, where people learn a hard lesson about marital infidelity. Some people, however, never seem to learn. In fact, just living a number of years on planet Earth is no guarantee that you're going to learn anything. A classic example from the movies of someone who never learns a lesson is the figure of James Bond. In many ways, he's still that same cool, manipulative personality that we learned to get to know 25 years ago. People want somebody like James Bond to stay the same, but people who stay the same only exist on the movies, because the fact of the matter is people are always changing. Another example that I point to in this regard is Thomas Merton, who wrote his spiritual autobiography called The Seven-Story Mountain when he was still a pretty young man. And people were always quoting that book to him. And finally, towards the end of his life, he said, you know, the person who wrote that book is dead. I feel a little bit the same way when I'm reviewing some of my old newspaper columns of 15 years ago. I feel like Thomas Merton. I can hardly even relate to the person who wrote those columns 15 years ago. There's a song that sometimes people play at wedding receptions called Just the Way You Are. And one of the lines in there is, don't go changing. A lot of us would like individuals to stay the same, but that is not the way of nature. Nature goes through endless cycles of death and rebirth. So why should we human beings, who are called to constant change, be any exception to the rule?